Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because, folks, life's too short to be miserable. Welcome back, Inspiring Possible listeners. So excited to have you yet again here for another episode. Well, and it's the summer now. So I always love a good summer slowdown if I can slow down a little bit, which I've really been trying this week, by the way, Chantelle. Okay. But a good summer slowdown to help me reimagine what could be for me in the next season of life, especially when the fall come up and then the winter. So I hope that no matter where you're at along your journey today, that you are doing something restorative this summer, because I know a lot of y'all are running all the time through life. And if that is you and you would consider yourself maybe in the realm of high achieving, okay, then stay tuned because, there is some pitfalls and traps that sometimes can really entrap us people that really like to just go after whatever it is that we have on our mind. And so today I have Chantell Preston on the show, and she's a seasoned healthcare executive with nearly 30 years of experience in driving growth and transformation across the industry. But she's also the CEO of Preston Partners. She's the CEO of a lot of things. Can we just say a lot of things, Chantelle?
Yeah,
And you also then have your own, you're the owner of the dance bar to HTX,
mhm.
and you help a lot of women. And you also wrote this book that we're going to talk a little bit about. So if you maybe could summarize yourself, how would you summarize it? Because you've done a lot. Like, you've served on the Chamber of Commerce for Houston. You've won the Breakthrough Women Award. Like, now, if I was to say, who is Chantelle Preston, what would you say?
Well, I'm gonna tell you that who I'm gonna tell you I am now is very different than who I was 10 years ago. But now I'm in the second phase of life, and meaning that I've gone from being the doer to being kind of the more on the wisdom side, and how can I get back? And so, yes, to your point, I own dance studio here in Houston. I own the women's professional volleyball team in San Francisco. But it's all synergistic to how can I help empower and elevate other women? And so when people say, well, what are you doing now? Yes, I consult for healthcare now because that's where my forte is. But where I'm passionate is about how can I help empower and elevate other women and change kind of the narrative for the next generation of women coming up the ladders throughout their careers.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because that's actually probably what I should have asked. What are you passionate about now versus, like, who would you say that you are? Because, like all of us, and we were just talking before we pushed the record button, because I know you're also a mom, and there's so many multifaceted roles that we play. And, throughout our careers, you can sometimes achieve a lot of things and really be able to create a lot of change for a lot of different, whether it's companies or people. But it's almost like, oh, yeah, who do I wanna be in this season of life? And I think that can change. Would you agree about
Oh
that?
my gosh, absolutely. And I love the fact that you said season because I always say there's a season and reason for everything. And, in the old days, we would look at what are my goals in 5 years, 10 years. Now I'm like, wait, what are my goals in a year, in 6 months, in 3 months? Because so much can change in those time frames and things that are way beyond our control. So, who do I want to be right now today may be different than who I want to be in 3 months. So, I kind of look at it, what's important now in this season that I'm in right now. And yes, 10 years ago, we wouldn't be having a whole different conversation because it was all about work, 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 work. And now it's about, okay, I've been there, I've reached the pinnacle. When I got there, it was nothing like I anticipated. So it really caused me to do a lot of self reflection in regards to what does success mean to me? And not what my parents are telling me, not what society says, but what does it mean to me? And really evaluating what do I want and how am I going to achieve that?
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I know you have a new book coming out called The Success Lie. Did I get that right? That's the
You
name of
did.
the book, The Success Lie. By the time this actually goes live, I think the book will have launched. So y'all make sure and go check that out. But let's talk about some of the lies that are, because I mean, when we do sometimes read the bios and things, like, I think people can get intimidated by, like, looking at all the things, which I think are all incredible, right? Because I know you worked your ass off to do all of that stuff, right? But what is sometimes the lie that is behind some of the success that people might see?
I think it is you can have it all. I think we all grew up, and no Generation Xers grew up with have the perfect house, the white picket fence, the perfect family, the perfect career, blah, blah, blah. And so we worked so hard to achieve that outcome. And then when we got there, we're like, wait, this is it? I thought it was going to change all my life in such positive ways that then all the pieces would fall together because, again, I'd worked so hard for that one thing. And it really caused me to focus totally on the outcome and not the journey. And when you get to that point, you look back and you go, gosh, what did I give up or sacrifice to get here? And is this really what I wanted? Or was this just what I was told? And therefore, my drive to get there was so passionate that I just didn't stop to think about it. And so I think that no more about you can have it all. You can, but usually not at the same time. And what I see happen is this perfectionism. Throw that one in there. We all want to be perfect at everything we do, especially women. We were going to be 100% at home. We're going to be 100% in our careers. It doesn't work like that. And I think if we could remove a few things from our terminology, like balance and you can have it all and perfectionism, it would be golden. And I think we don't realize that until later in our careers. And so I'm hoping that maybe some of the things I share today will resonate with some of your listeners as to you don't have to live in that world of rules that we didn't create.
Okay, well, let's pull this back about because I feel like there's a story in here. So I'm curious, at what point did what you expect life to look like not match up? And maybe you can tell listeners a little bit
All right.
about
Well,
where
here
how
we
you
go.
found
Yeah.
yourself.
So I worked really hard. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a healthcare entrepreneur, wanted to create something amazing. I had the opportunity. I talked my business partner into leaving his company, and we started a company called Atlantic, which formulated into a company called Mentis Neurorehabilitation. We built this amazing traumatic brain injury program here in Houston, went nationwide, and then in 2015, we sold to private equity. And so most people you talk to, you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it was. It was a
It
great
is. Yeah.
experience. But when we got there, I thought, this is it. I've been working how many years, 20 some years to get here. Here we are. And I remember at that point in my life, I was like, wow, this is it. I had a great family. I had da da da, finally had it all. And my whole world fell apart. And what happened was is I was so focused on building that life that I thought I wanted that I wasn't present at home. I wasn't present with my friends, my family, nobody, because I didn't care about anything but reaching that goal. And when I got there, I ended up getting divorced. I ended up, losing a lot of things, but I also lost my identity because my identity was so tied up in who I was as this entrepreneur, as the chief development officer, that I didn't know who I was anymore. And when we signed the paperwork, of course, everybody's like, oh, it's going to be great. No, things always change. So anybody that's looking at selling their company, things always change. And my heart just wasn't in it anymore. And it became about the economics, not about the outcomes. And it just wasn't for me. And about a year after, I just finally had to leave and say, this is not for me anymore. I've got to rethink how I'm going to live my life. And that was a pinnacle time for me because it was that I thought I had it all, and then when I got there, and it's hard to explain, Chrissy, because a lot of people are like, "Wait, but you had the money, you did. Money doesn't buy you happiness. It may buy you some freedom, but it doesn't buy you happiness." And what it does is it forces you to kind of look things and say, "Is this the life that I really wanna live?" And so that time of my life and it took me a couple years to come out of it. And it was a lot of personal development on my side in regards to, is this what I wanna continue to do, or do I wanna take a step back and say, "Okay, what do I want? What are my values?" I had a 5-year-old. My daughter was standing in the kitchen with me at a very pivotal moment, and she said, "I'm hungry," and my response was, "What do you want me to do about it?" And then I realized, "Oh my god, I'm your mother." And I had no idea what my own child ate for lunch. And that was because I was so focused on my career that nothing else around me mattered. And so that was kind of the pivotal time for me to just say, hey, maybe there's more to this than just working and just building a career. Because I thought you could have one or the other. And the reality is you can have them both. There's no such thing as balance, but you can integrate the two together to be effective at both. You just have to set the right expectations.
Yeah, well, I'm like, I just think you just said a word that is, worth so much, expectations. Because I was listening to a podcast the other day and, they were just talking about what this person would call the crisis of our country, and she really was saying it was more about just a perception issue, and I think whenever we think about people's perceptions of how things should be versus how they are, a lot of times, there is things that we have more than we sometimes realize, but if we're so focused on what this outcome should look like or what our life should look like or never pause. I know for me, I don't think it was until like maybe even not too long ago, maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know. But it wasn't that long ago that I actually started thinking about what does this life want to look like for me, because I think there was always this prescribed idea of what life should be, and that was just from a group of individuals that I just saw most of my life growing up, that this is the goal. Here's what you should look like. This is what you should aspire to, like you said, but never asking like, well, there's so many ways to live this life. Could I actually do something completely different? Like if I wanted to leave all tomorrow and go be a beach hermit, I could. That's the truth. I mean, I might not have much resources. I might have to, learn how to make some drinks at the tiki bar or something like
Right.
that, but I could live and I could probably be just as happy. I could probably be happy as a lark, just
Well,
surfing, whatever. But we
exactly.
sometimes have to get to this point, and it sounds like for you, you came to a point of crisis. It's like, but it was crisis and on the pinnacle that you'd been working so hard at the same time. So
Hmm.
I'm sure that was like a hard thing to balance and then go into, okay, well, that didn't exactly feel or
Right.
happen the way that I anticipated it being. Now I need to have to rethink this whole life thing.
Well, you
So
do. And that's what happened. And look, I love to work. I'll just tell you that. It wasn't necessarily that I was miserable at work. I loved what I was doing. I just loved it so much that I just didn't care about anything else around
yeah,
me.
you had the blinders on,
I had the
kind of like just
blinders
straight
on.
focus.
Exactly. And that's okay. But when you do it for so long, you don't realize the value of relationships and you don't respect them enough to put in the time and the effort to have. And I didn't realize how much connection I needed, right? I thought, "Oh, I've got my friends at work and da, 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 da." It doesn't work like that. And I will tell you, my mother unexpectedly passed away a few years ago, and that was such a devastating time for me because she'd never been sick a day in her life. We were best friends. And I look back, and if I hadn't have made that life choice 10 years ago to say, "Hey, I'm gonna do something different because these relationships are important to me and I do wanna spend time with them," I would still be regretting to this day the fact that I hadn't spent a lot of time with my mother. Well, the last 10 years, I spent a ton of time with her because I reprioritized what my focus was. And that goes back to I was raised that money and title was success. And I thought that that's just what it was. In order for you to be worthy, you had to have the money and the title. And so I think it's about the things that are ingrained in us by society, by our parents. But is it? And now I look back and I go, gosh, I'm glad I figured it out at 40, not 80. But now I realize the value of relationships, the value of my friends, my families, my chosen family. Those individuals bring me so much joy. Doesn't mean I can't still have a thriving career, but it's about being intentional with my time to make sure I'm accommodating the things that I really want in my life.
Yeah. Okay. So let's unpack this a little bit, and maybe you can take me a little bit on your journey about what helped you, and now kind of maybe even some things that you mentioned in the book to help people break through redefining what success may look like for them and how they can be able to have a like almost it sounds like more aligned
Yeah.
way of living that works for them.
Totally. And my biggest one is saying yes to everything. I think as women, we were taught when we were younger, be seen, not heard, say yes, be nice to everyone. And so we get in this habit of saying yes to things because we don't ever want to disappoint someone. And I'm the world's worst. I say shiny penny, somebody asks me, I'm like, everyone loves to feel needed, right? They ask me to do something. Yes, I'd love to help you. And then you get home and you go, oh my God, I don't have time and I don't really want to do it. Why did I say yes? But we feel guilty for saying no because we don't want to let someone down. I was room mom for 5 years in elementary school with my oldest, okay? Every year, here I am raising my hand. It was the most selfless, I mean, just the worst job. And I'm like, why do I do this? This is not making me a better parent. And it's definitely in my kids' eyes not making me a better parent. But I felt like I had to say yes because I was trying to prove something to somebody. I finally had to reframe it in my own head. And now I don't say yes immediately to anyone. I say, let me check my calendar because that gives me an out of saying, I need to check to make sure I can do what you need me to do in the time frame you need me to do it. That gives me a chance to take a breath, kind of let my frontal lobe hit the back, my emotions hit my logic. And then I can say, does this help me fulfill the goals and objectives I'm trying to achieve? And if it doesn't, then I just respectfully pass. And what I had to reframe my own self was it also, in my mind, it allows me, if I say no, it gives someone else the opportunity to say yes. Meaning I may refer them to someone. I may, but somebody out there wants that opportunity. And so why am I hogging it and doing a half-assed job when I could give it to somebody or someone else could get it and really do an exceptional job? And so saying yes to everything, that's the first thing. You've got to learn to say no and be very intentional with your time. And another one is the integration of my career and my personal life. I used to think they had to be totally opposite. Check it at the door. Don't talk about your career with your family. Now I integrate them together. And frankly, I almost run my family like my business. We have Sunday evening get togethers. What do? We talk about logistics of the week. We talk about my kids know your crisis is not going to become my crisis. So you better have your stuff together. But also, how can you contribute to the family? Kids want to contribute. We can go into how it's all great for them, but also why am I carrying all the load? We're a team, just like at work, we're a team. So who can do what? And obviously it's age appropriate, but it's integrating the two together because I learned that being a CEO makes me a better mom and being a mom makes me a better CEO. And that was one thing that was really surprising to me.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because you think about it, we're a team and it's a system. We're a
Yep.
family system or you're a business system, whatever you want to look at it, organizational system. And it's like, what are the things that we may need to do, like clockwork, whether it be like Sunday meetings, to just make sure we're fostering, not as something to tick off the box, but check off the box, but just to be able to promote and make sure that we're checking in with each other and setting that intention. And I really think it goes back to intentional living. I used to actually way back in the few years ago, I used to do these goal setting groups with people and we'd create goals and we just talk about intentions. And this year there was a girl that runs a yoga studio in town and she was like, I'm going to do an intentional living group. And I'm like, I'm going to be a part because number one, I'm not facilitating it, but I just need a reminder about how to do these things a little bit more intentionally. And so when you were talking about that, that's what was coming to mind. It's like more of just a path to be like, if I want healthy relationships, what do I have to put on a list of things to do to make that happen? So for me, because I can relate, Chantel, okay?
Mhm.
I love to work. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
If I didn't have a child or animals at home that needed
Yes.
my care and attention,
Often. Yeah.
yeah, or a significant other or, family that wanted to spend time with me, I probably could just put my nose to the grind and, like, do it
Yeah.
all day long. But I'm in this season too, sounds like one that you've gotten into, where I'm like, "Okay, it's okay if I rest. It's okay if, my identity is not necessarily tied up into all these achievements." But when you were saying all these things, one of the things that I have learned how to do, and I don't do it perfectly, I gotta say no to something. So, it doesn't mean that it doesn't be that somebody asks me something, and I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great. I'd really like to do that." But does it align with where I'm at and what I can focus on in this season? And if I can't focus on it wholeheartedly, then it's a no. But I talk to women, and this is something I think that is so hard, especially where I'm from. We were talking about in the South. Southern culture is very much like, yes.
Mm.
It's very people pleasing, a little bit passive aggression in there if you take on something that
Yep.
you're not really wanting to take on. I mean, you're my neighbor over in Texas, so you know how it goes. So you're like used to saying yes so much that I think this is a really hard one for people to just realize, like, you could say no to something that you don't want to do, you know?
Well, and I have a group of like a board of directors, and we had a meeting in New York earlier this week. And, look, none of us are great at it. Let's just admit it. Okay. I can sit here and act like I'm like perfect. By no means am
I'm
I.
not. No, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. And so
Getting
it's
better.
funny. And we had this whole conversation and we wrote down like all the stuff that we're involved with. And I was going through that list, Christy, and I was like, wow, does this provide me what I need at this point in my life? No, no, no. By the time I left there, I had resigned from 2 different boards because they're not what I need. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago they were, but they're not anymore. And so how can I reduce the what I call non-productive time to fill it with something else? Because you brought up something a second ago about taking care of ourselves. And that was probably the one thing that I took for granted for so long. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good, right? And we would just push through. We're good. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm
Uh,
fine. Right. And we don't realize the toll it takes on our bodies and both physically and mentally. And I finally have gotten to the point in my life where I'm like, I do need some downtime. I can't be on 24/7, 365 days a year. I do need some downtime. And I've gotten to where I put in my calendar 1 hour, just 1 hour a week that's just mine. With kids and with spouses, nothing's yours. So it's like it's my 1 hour. If I want to sit and stare at a wall, if I want to take a nap, if I want to go for a walk, that is my 1 hour that's my time. And it's a non-negotiable. It's on my calendar. People say, "Well, what if something comes up?" Well, I don't cancel meetings with other people. Why am I gonna cancel a meeting with myself? The most important person at the table. And that just it's almost a psychological thing a little bit that I know that I have that 1 hour that's just mine, but it helps me kind of just reset. And I think we take that for granted sometimes that we need that reset and we need those times of just silence or just to think through things. And I took that for granted in my younger days because we were just so focused on just go, 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 go that, and it took me a long time to get here because then I felt guilty. Oh my gosh, I should be doing something. I should be doing something. And sometimes your body and your mind just say, I just don't want to do anything. And people think, "Oh, that's lazy." No, sometimes that's what you need, and it took me probably 45 years to get there. I've finally gotten there where there are days I'm just like, "I'm not gonna do anything." Very rare, but every once in a while, and I think that's taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're putting the mask on first.
Yeah, you know what? I'm laughing just because I can totally resonate with what you're saying. It's really hard when you're so used to being a doer to just be a beer. Like I'm just being today, like I don't have anything on the agenda. And it's something you almost have to force yourself to get in the habit of trying to do and reminding yourself that because I think the lie is that if you're not doing, then it's not productive
That's
or
right.
it's not worth doing. And it's like, no, actually, me just being, or to your point earlier, being present with the people in my life, or just I've been bird watching in my backyard a little bit lately. And it's a little bit strange because I'm just sitting there literally and looking to see, oh, there's a bird right there. I don't bird watch as in like trying to name the birds. I'm just like, there's a bird, you know? And I was actually doing it this morning, and I've done it actually I've been on a good streak this week, so I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back. But I was like, "Oh, there's a bird. Then there's a bird." And I'm like, "This seems so silly." But I'm like, my brain needs just to focus and do nothing but look at the birds. And if that's all I wanna do, that is okay, but it's hard to rewire, I think, to this point.
Really.
Anybody that's listening, man, woman, whoever you are, and you do like to have goals and you
Mhm,
like to see those outcomes come to
mhm.
fruition, it is trying to refocus to realize sometimes the goal is just to like sit
Yeah.
and that's okay.
It is, and, and we go back to so many we could parlay off that in so many ways. And again, like you said, it's not about, "Oh, I've gotta spend tons of time," but every once in a while, sometimes you just need it, and that's okay, and it doesn't have to be meeting your goals, things like that. It can be a totally different thing to everyone, and so it's finding those things that help you specifically reset. And, look, I love listening to podcasts in my car when I'm driving, I love to do a lot of stuff, but sometimes I'm just like, "I just need silence. I just wanna sit with myself." And it's sometimes they're like, "What do you think about?" Nothing. I mean, and for those of us that minds never turn off, that's almost just the greatest gift.
What a gift.
It is a gift, and I mean, 'cause a lot of us, we wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, still thinking about everything, we all keep our, notebooks by our bed so we can write all this stuff down, and so and I think as we get older, we realize just the value of that, and again, different season, different reason. I'm not saying everybody can do it right now, so if you're in a place in your life where you can, I just challenge you to try it because and then feel how you feel afterwards. Did it revitalize you? How'd you think? Did you feel guilty? But like you said, it's just training yourself in a different manner.
Yeah, well, and I would even say too, and because you know what, unfortunately, Chantel, I've talked to people of, and women specifically, who have really put just they're high achievers. They went for it,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, I hear too many times that I'd like to count, and I'd actually say most of the time where they will get to a place of burnout that they may not share with everybody. They end up going through major life transitions because of everything that there's a cost sometimes that
Mhm.
if you're not taking care of things, it's kind of like investments, right? If you're not investing in yourself or investing in relationships or investing in other things along the way, then those things start to deteriorate over time. It's like if you don't take care of it, I mean, it's like a flower outside. It's not gonna grow itself if it doesn't have, water and sunlight and everything like that. It's eventually not gonna be a flower. It's gonna look pretty bad. A weed or
Mhm.
dead, one or the other. But taking care of yourself over time, I think is something that to learn how to do it in any season is something I think that we don't always get taught or we take for granted or we think we'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it when
Well,
we get to that other point or when I get here, then I will. And then from your story, what I'm hearing, it was kind of like when I get here, then this is what it's
mhm.
going to be. And that's not the reality of everything that happened.
Absolutely. And I'm not gonna I'll stereotype just a little bit, but usually when we get to our 40s and 50s, because maybe we're done raising kids, we're trying to figure out who we are now, in our careers, are we really getting to where we want to be? And then just throw menopause in there. There's just a
Let's not
lot of
talk about
yeah. Yeah, we won't even go there today. It's another whole nother session. But it is, and you're starting to rethink things in your life. And so it's important to have some of just those abilities or those practices that you can go back to so you don't get you don't lose your sanity.
Yeah.
A lot of the times I hear people and I'm at a point in my life where when I was 20 I thought, "Oh, 50 you're dead," right? Well, here I am at 52 and I'm like, "Wait a minute, I'm just getting started. This is the best time of my life because now I've figured out who I am and what does make me happy." And don't get me wrong, I loved what I did, but also it's more than just trying to achieve an outcome. It's how do I make a bigger impact? And my theory in life has always been do the right thing, the money will come. And it does work out that way. And so it's like just reframing your mindset and having that abundance mentality. And you said something earlier I want to go to. It's like, we forget. I used to think gratitude, blah, la, la. I've heard that before. It's amazing how if you do take a step back and you're like, gosh, this is kind of amazing of where I am and what I'm doing, no matter what the situation in your life is. You create the life you want by the decisions that you make. Your circumstances do not create your life. That's how I feel. And again, I went from riches to rags overnight when I was a kid and had to earn my way of everything I did in life. And so I'm a big one for, be intentional with your decisions based on what you do want to achieve at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to a question. Sometimes I ask later on in the show, but I'm asking it now. If you were to go back to 20 something you or early 30s you, where you were probably doing all the
Yeah.
things and give yourself a piece of advice. And I always say, I don't know if I'd listen to myself because I was pretty stubborn in a lot of
Right.
ways. And,
Right.
I thought I knew best and, all the things. But if you were able to go back to younger you in that age range and be able to stop you for 5.5 seconds and give you some words of encouragement or things that shake Chantel and say, listen to me. Is there anything that you wish you could go back and tell you at that age?
We'll go back to my arrogant self back in those days too. I think
Okay.
the biggest thing I would say is time is the one thing you'll never get back, and it's not unlimited. And I think when we're younger, we think we're invincible. And so, oh, we have plenty of time to do whatever in life. I think it would just be very intentional with your time. If you don't control your time, someone else will. And that was not something I learned until very late in life. And I let everyone else tell me how to spend my time versus me establishing how I wanted to spend my time. And so I think it would have really helped me to maintain the relationships that I had and I wanted. It would have let me take care of myself more and probably do a lot of things that I wished I would have done younger that now that I'm older
Maybe
and
had a little bit more fun. I mean, you have more
Yes.
fun
So,
too.
I
You
wasn't
know,
gonna
when you
say
like
yes, yes, all those things because it was just like, no, no, I gotta be at work. I gotta do this. Da, 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 da. I mean, I had Addison on a Friday. I went back to work on Tuesday. I mean, again, just give yourself some self-compassion because life is going to run its course no matter what. And so it's like just enjoy it along the way. Don't be so focused on the outcome. Enjoy the journey.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, and I don't know about you, but outcomes can shift too. Like you can be aiming for something and then something hits you like a freight train and you're like, well, I guess we're not going that direction. So, and then that can wreck people if their identity is tied to that outcome that never gets actualized.
Well, and that and also there's been many a times where if I wasn't paying attention, in the last 10 years, if I wasn't paying attention to some of the other stuff, I would have missed great opportunities because I thought this is exactly what I wanted. Well, I didn't realize this opportunity was even
Yeah.
available. And so if you don't open those blinders and just look around, one of the things that I tell people all the time, I love to talk to everyone. I love to hear people's stories. And I think there's some value to that. I love that personal connection because you never know when that person you can help them or they can help you. And so I hope that even the younger generation, they're all on their phones and that we can still talk to each other because I think that that's how you really become successful, but also fulfilled at the same time.
Yeah, well, and let me ask you this, since we're talking about communication and maybe even networking or building relationships, how has that impacted your journey throughout your whole career of being able to because you're talking about, and I have a, almost 18-year-old home and this is what
Yep.
we look like. And so for those of y'all that are just listening, it's me with my phone straight up on my face.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
But how did those relationships that maybe you didn't build along the way end up allowing you to have certain opportunities?
Oh, I think it was huge. I mean, again, my big thing is I wanted mentors. I wanted to learn from people and I wasn't scared to ask for help. And I think that that was kind of one of my superpowers is that I didn't care what people thought. I would just wanted to learn more. And so I found some great mentors. Now, there were some that beat the hell out of me. Don't kid yourself, which is okay because they made me very strong at the same time. But finding people that will help you and want you to be successful. Back in my day, I can't believe I just said that out loud. It made me sound really old. Back in my
I've been
day,
saying that so much
you
recently, and
know,
I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I
I
can't
know.
believe that I'm
How old
that
are we?
funny."
We're old, for God's sakes. But back in those days, we didn't have big organizations or platforms like they do now. I mean, I'm big in YPO, I'm big in Entreprenista, and these are groups that are helping each other. Whereas in my generation, there was so few opportunities for women at the top. They were too busy cutting each other's legs out from under them, each other. And so it's like, how do we build and utilize those communities that are available to us now? I tell every young person, use them to the fullest extent. Don't go down the rabbit hole, but understand what you're trying to get out of them. Find like minded people that can help you, push you, challenge you, applaud you, all of those things to help you become a better version of yourself. And we didn't have that back in the younger days. Now I see a lot more of that happening. And I just tell people all the time take advantage of that because those are people that can, again, help you accelerate where you're trying to go if they're the right people. On the flip side, there's a lot of people that don't want you to be successful. And I think that's the hardest thing to tell people is you are who you surround yourself with. And not everyone, and it could be your closest friends or your family, don't necessarily want you to be successful. So be very careful who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, somebody that's maybe not necessarily wanting to see you. And it's interesting because I don't think it's always direct. I don't think it's always like people
Subconscious.
that are directly intending to
Right.
thwart you along your path. It's just that they can either see the vision or see what you're trying to do. And they maybe doesn't, they're trying to maybe even protect you, but then it can actually become people that end up maybe keeping you from the potential that you have to grow into. So I'm curious, Chantel, what is your definition of success now?
Oh gosh, my definition of success now is really internal peace. You know, um, laughter, fun. How can I make an impact by doing the things that I absolutely am passionate about? And if you would have asked me 10, 15 years ago, I'd have said all about money. Now it's how can I make an impact in people's lives And how can I maintain my own peace and sanity? How can I not be burned out? And I had this conversation the other day. How can I continue to do the things I love without turning it into a business, without turning it into something where I do get burnout? And that's where it's sometimes you have to take that step back and go, okay, am I doing this because my type A personality is coming out? And it's like, okay, hold on, we got to do this. Or is it, hey, I'm just really loving and enjoying this. Let's just keep doing it the way we're doing it. And so sometimes I have to check myself. But at the end of the day, I want to be spend time with my kids. I have 3 years left until my daughter goes to college. I want to enjoy my life and laugh as much as I possibly can, and I wanna continue to foster the relationships that I've built and have that personal connection with people, whether it's in business or in my personal life.
Yeah. How would you encourage people to redefine what success means to them? Do you have any like go to things to think about? Because I think, again, if we ask the world what they would think success is, I think majority people are, like you said at the beginning, that you came out of the gate thinking that, like, okay, success is money and title, money and
Mm,
title. If you achieve this and you got this, then
mhm.
you have arrived. But for those who are like maybe at the crossroads, like you were at one point, questioning, like, wait, I've maybe got this far, or, maybe I think I want that, but I'm not sure. What would you challenge them to think about as they're redefining what success is for them?
I always tell people, and this is so archaic, but write down your pros and cons. What do you think success means to you, and where did it come from? And see if there's a pattern there. But I ask people all the time, what are you trying to prove to who? And are you trying to prove something, or are you trying to live a certain way? And it sounds very elementary a little bit, but most people have never even just sat down and thought about it. They just assume that success means X. Now, I think the younger generations are getting it a lot better than we ever did. I have this conversation with my oldest all the time. She went from I want to be a Harvard grad to I want to be a dance instructor. And it's like, what's going to make you happy at the end of the day? What are you passionate about? And I mean, 8 hours out of a day being miserable is a lot of your life. And so, what are the positives? What are the negatives? And people say, well, I need a job. I gotcha. But then what can you take from that job and reframe it in your mind to make it a positive? You know, um, if you're working in a restaurant, I love working in a restaurant. How can I help people and have conversations that bring me joy? And it's almost like reframing in your mind how you view things.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's interesting. I used to work in restaurants probably for about 5 years when
Me
I was
too. Yes.
You did? Okay. And honestly, it was some of the best times of my life, but I think it's just trying to, like you said, figure out, okay, how can I pretty much reframe what I'm doing versus if I feel like it's just a job, yeah, it's going to be just a job. But if it's like, oh, I get to meet all these people, I get to develop my skills in conversation, I mean, I met so many interesting people waiting tables. I don't know if you had this experience, but like, I mean, the people that I would meet, I'd be like, wow, I would have never met them any other way than this. And so, I attribute a lot of my, just what I would maybe see as what some people would say is success now is just from those early skills of just being able to meet people where they are and serve them whatever it is that they ordered with the best attitude I could. I'm not saying I was always the best attitude, but I tried. I tried.
Right.
I really did.
And
So,
and that's do you wanna be relationship oriented or do you wanna be transactional? How can you do a little bit of both? I talk a lot about this in negotiations, how can you build a mutually beneficial relationship with folks? How can they get something from you and vice versa? And I think that that's what the connection's really about. And so, again, I'm just happy where I am and hopefully can find some peace, but it doesn't mean it's easy. Still got lots of balls in the air.
no.
But,
Well, and it's still
yeah,
always, when you're wired a certain way, it is
yeah,
hard to like,
yeah.
and I do think everybody's gifted and wired in different ways. And that's
Mm,
something I've realized because I used to be like, oh, okay, here, even when I started this podcast, I was starting to think about how do I help people realize what could be possible for them and help them to explore and maybe consider and think of those things. And then let's hear some steps of how to kind of move through some of these barriers, maybe limiting beliefs, take action, things like that. And something that I realized along the way is that, again, we are all wired so differently. So
mhm,
how I may do something is not going to be as effective for how somebody else may do that. and we can still get to the result, the end goal. It just may look a lot different based off our personalities, how we're wired, and things like that. And so when me and you're talking and we're talking about slow down, like for some people, they might be listening to me like, Christy, I got that box checked off.
Yeah.
I can slow down all the time. Because I'll never forget, I did this presentation one time with a group of women, and I was like, yeah, and it was maybe about saying no or slowing down or taking a break. And somebody was like, I was like, do y'all all have that problem? And then there was a few people in the room like, no, I don't have that problem. And I was like, oh, wait, that's right. We're all different. We're all different. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But okay. So if people are like, hey, I want to get this book because I want to read a little bit more about maybe how the success could be a lie and how to redefine that for themselves. Or I know you also have a podcast, Get Real, Get Results. Maybe you can tell a little bit people how they can find you and connect with you and maybe learn more.
Sure, I'd love to. So the Success Lie is available pre-sale right now, depending on when this airs. But Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all your major book opportunities, distribution levels. Get Real, Get Results. Again, same thing on the podcast, Spotify, Apple, anywhere there's a podcast. You can find Get Real, Get Results. And then my email is chantellpreston.com. Lots of fun stuff on there as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, let me ask you this. What is the one takeaway that you're hoping for readers from the Success Lie?
I hope they take away permission to rewrite the rules in a manner that they can thrive both personally and professionally. That's what I hope they take away from it.
Okay. Well, look, Chantel, I just want to acknowledge you for not only doing all the incredible things that you've been able to do and that are continuing to do, but that at some point you said, look, success to me is my own piece as well. Not only just these relationships that I want to cultivate and the impact that I want to make, but my piece is my priority. And I'll never forget this woman I met one time, and she said, I used to have something across the top of my door at my office that said, if it cost me my piece, it's too expensive. And so I just want to acknowledge you for not only, finding your way back to peace, but then also trying to help demystify or decode or help debunk what success really is and help people redefine it for what it is for their life. Because I think the more we can redefine it of what matters to us, then hopefully we will have less burnout people on the side of the road having to figure out how to reclaim their peace overall. So thank you for coming on the show, for sharing your insights and wisdom today. I really appreciate it. And if you are listening, I'll leave you with one thing that I'm taking from today. And I think, one of the things that Chantel said earlier, I wrote it down because I think this is important. And as you go about your day, if there is something you're striving for, that if you think that your life should be a certain way, or maybe you're struggling with a decision, or maybe you feel pressure by people in your life to do certain things or to look a certain way or to have success in a certain way that they feel like defines what that means, just ask yourself, what are you trying to prove and to whom? And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Until next time.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.